Welcome everyone, and thank you for joining today's 20 is Plenty speaker series. At Metroplan Orlando, safety is a top priority and a shared responsibility. Speeds plays a critical role in the severity of crashes, especially on residential streets where people are walking, biking, and driving every day. We are glad that you are here to learn more, learn more, share ideas, and be part of this conversation. Thank you for your participation and commitment to safety. I want to remind everyone to please add your questions throughout the webinar using the Q&A feature at the bottom of your Zoom screen. We will be answering your questions at the end of the presentations. The 20 is Plenty is based on a simple idea. Setting speeds at 20 miles per hour on residential streets makes neighborhood safer. Lower speeds give drivers more time to react, reduce severity of crashes, and create safer streets for walking, biking, and everyday activities like kids playing outside, neighbors walking the dogs, and residents gardening. The movement began in the United Kingdom in the early 2000s and has spread to communities around the globe, including many cities across the United States. While updating speed limit signs are an important first steps, signs alone are not enough to change behavior. Successful 20 is Plenty programs combine signage with street design improvements, community education and outreach, as well as enforcement to help make safer speeds the norm. Research is clear. The faster a vehicle is traveling, the greater the risk of severe injury or death for people outside a vehicle. While many residential streets posted speed is 30 miles per hour, it's easy to understand why fewer children walk to school or play outside, because crashes at these speeds can have life-changing consequences. Studies show that 20 mile per hour speed limits on residential streets offer multiple benefits, including fewer insurance claims, which will lead to potential for lower insurance costs, as well as safer and more active neighborhoods where people feel safe walking, biking, and spending time outside. While the benefits are clear, lowering speeds is not as simple as changing a sign. In Florida, communities must first conduct a formal evaluation to determine whether the 20 mile per hour speed limit is appropriate in accordance with state law. Once approved, successful implementation involves several steps, including street design improvements, public education, and enforcement. We are excited to share with you today the story of three very different communities who are working to implement 20 is Plenty. Our first speaker, Matt Fall, currently serves as the Senior Bicycle Pedestrian Coordinator for the City of Jacksonville. He has worked as a transportation specialist at every level of government, from federal to local, and has played a major role in the development of the City of Jacksonville's residential speed limit reduction study, and he's now on the front line of the implementation. Dan Bergenthal is joining us from Salt Lake City, where he currently serves as the Livable Streets Program Manager and as city's traffic safety engineer. He enjoys the challenge of improving safety for all modes of transportation and promoting active transportation modes. And thirdly, we will hear from Jeremy Nash, who has been working in Madison, Wisconsin since 2015. He was part of the city's Vision Zero team when the city became a Vision Zero city in 2020. and is currently the project lead of Madison's 20 is Plenty program. While there are some similarities between each of these cities, they are each at a different stage on their 20 is Plenty implementation journey. And we hope their stories provide some inspiration to start thinking about global speed limit reductions in our communities. Let's head over to Jacksonville to learn more about their approach. Matt?
Yeah, thanks, Adriana. Hopefully, y'all can hear me. I got a lot of information I'm going to go through really quickly, but I'm happy to share these slides after so you don't have to follow along with every single detail. Yeah, I'm the Senior Bike Ped Coordinator for the City of Jacksonville, and I just want to get into some of our efforts to do a 20 is Plenty residential speed reduction study and how to implement that. If you could go to the next slide, please. So I'll start with a quick snapshot of Jacksonville just to provide some context. In the 2020 census, our population was approaching 1 million residents. This is a threshold that I'm sure we've by far surpassed in 2025. We were the fourth fastest growing city by population between 2022 and 2023. Just gives you an indication of how quickly we're growing. We're also the largest city by land area in the contiguous United States, which translates to a lot of roadway miles to manage. Unfortunately, we also consistently rank high for pedestrian and bicycle fatalities. The latest rankings place Jacksonville as the 15th most dangerous city in America for pedestrians and the third most dangerous city for cyclists. This is all based on reported fatalities. One of the challenges that we face in our roadway network is it's been built historically for speed. We have tons of slip lanes, right turns on red, lots of just turning radii and other design features that keep vehicles moving very quickly, even in residential areas. Of note, our downtown is about 16 miles from the Atlantic Ocean. So most trips between our long single occupancy vehicle and they occur on higher speed arterials. All of this makes speed management particularly challenging in Jacksonville. If you go to the next slide, please. So many of you are probably familiar with Smart Growth America's Dangerous by Design report. Jacksonville has appeared in the top 20 as most dangerous cities for as long as the report, I think, has been published. Last year, we improved from the sixth most dangerous city for pedestrians to the 15th. We considered that a modest improvement, but we're definitely not celebrating that too long. We know that these rankings can fluctuate year to year, and the underlying risk on our streets still remains high. As difficult as these rankings are to see every year when they come out, I think they've helped create political and organizational momentum to address vehicle speeds more directly. If you go to the next slide, please. So in 2023, we were awarded a Safe Streets and Roads for All grant to develop a City of Jacksonville's first Vision Zero action plan. We rolled out the plan earlier this year, and we've already begun implementation and coordination, performance monitoring through our high injury network maps and Vision Zero dashboards. Things are really moving in a positive direction in terms of Vision Zero. If you go to the next slide, please. So while developing our Vision Zero action plan, we also completed our 20 is Plenty speed reduction study, the residential speed limit reduction study you see on the screen now. Completing the study at the same time that we were developing our Vision Zero plan, it was really helpful because it allowed us to directly incorporate 20 is Plenty implementation into our recommended Vision Zero actionable items. So we were able to sort of align those two reports while we were developing both. Next slide, please. So I'd be remiss if I didn't acknowledge Atkins Realis. They're the consultants that completed our 20 is Plenty study. Went on to win a Florida American Planning Association award, the Award of Excellence. And you can follow the URL or the QR code on this slide and read the full document. It's really good. We're really proud of them. Next slide, please. So both the Vision Zero action plan and the 20 is Plenty study are grounded in the safe systems approach. At its core, I won't get into every single detail, but the safe systems approach recognizes that people make mistakes. Our transportation system should be designed so those mistakes do not result in serious injury or death. It emphasizes shared responsibility across the roadway for all users, including safer behavior by all roadway users, better roadway designs that are a little bit more forgiving of human error because accidents are going to happen, improved vehicle safety features, appropriate speed setting on based on context and strong post-crash care when crashes do occur. For 20 is Plenty specifically, trying to implement that, our focus has been on the safer speeds, obviously, because speed is one of the most direct and effective levers we have to reduce injury severity, particularly on local and residential streets. Next slide, please. Before the 20 is Plenty study that we developed, the city attempted two neighborhood level 20-mile-per-hour speed reduction efforts to determine the best approach for reducing speeds. In both cases, the city just installed some 20-mile-per-hour signage without any additional countermeasures or programs or enforcement. And we found that overall vehicle speeds, they either stayed the same or in some cases they actually increased. So Jacksonville also had smaller neighborhood-driven efforts through an existing ordinance that we have that allows residents or homeowners associations to petition to lower speeds from the default 30 miles per hour to 20 miles per hour. The process requires 75% property owner buy-in. It also includes you need to do a traffic study, and there's also cost sharing for residents that want to do this. For the materials like the signage and speed humps, they all have to gather together some money and buy these items. While these are well-intentioned, these efforts revealed several problems. As documented in the public feedback section of the 20 is Plenty study, residents told us that the signs alone did not change driver behavior, which aligned with our other earlier efforts. Enforcement was often limited, and the process itself created equity challenges, particularly for less affluent neighborhoods that had a harder time navigating the requirements for paying for the signage and speed humps. These experiences showed us that relying on one-off petitions was neither scalable nor equitable. Next slide, please. So our study was grounded in extensive literature review, including national and international research on vehicle speeds, injury severity, and neighborhood livability. This research showed us that lowering speed limits alone can affect vehicle speeds, but effectiveness is strongly tied to signage density. In Jacksonville, our earlier efforts focused on replacing some of the existing signs rather than increasing overall sign density. And given our city size, like I said, we're the largest in the lower 48. Our signage can be sparse in areas, and in many residential areas or minor collectors, there are few posted speed limit signs. Drivers are expected to know that if they're in a residential area and they don't see a sign that the default speed is 30 miles per hour. I won't go too deep into this slide, but just keep in mind the signage density theory as we get to the implementation and actionable items. Next slide, please. Oh. Sorry, let me make sure my PC's plugged in. It said low battery. Um, so our study is really great, I think, because it really laid out clear goals, objectives, and a roadmap for implementation, recognizing that policy adoption is only the first step. Implementation also requires a substantial signage effort focused on increasing sign density, not just replacing existing signs, as I mentioned in the last slide. Next slide, please. So this roadmap is very simple, but it proved to be really effective. We felt that simple infographics and clear visuals like this roadmap showing each recommended action item, it really helped communicate expectations clearly. Elected officials and busy engineers need to quickly understand what we're asking when we ask to implement this plan, and they can have a very short attention span. And sometimes they'll only read the first section or the executive summary. And so we really wanted very clear infographics that were simple enough so they can get the idea right off the bat. We requested that our consultants front load in the executive summary a ton of infographics with concise data, clear action items, and we feel it made the plan more comprehensible and ultimately more politically feasible. And hopefully it's going to make it more implementable as we get to that stage. Next slide, please. So our study also included a comprehensive table of recommended countermeasures that could be implemented even if neighborhoods had not collectively requested or paid for speed humps. These included temporary countermeasures like removable speed feedback signs, as well as cost-effective treatments that can be integrated into larger, already scheduled roadway projects, such as curb extensions and chicanes. This table became a valuable tool for shifting conversations away from the we need speed humps in our neighborhood toward a broader discussion of design options that can improve neighborhood safety. The report also included detailed descriptions of each one of these countermeasures in the pages that follow this table, which is really great because sometimes residents don't really even know what we're recommending. If we go in there and say, we're going to put some chicanes and some speed feedback signs, they don't know sometimes until they actually see it. Next slide, please. Looking at actionable item number one, which is adopt a citywide policy that mandates a 20-mile-per-hour speed limit on all residential roads, uh, we didn't anticipate as much pushback on this as we did get. We had engineers, attorneys, elected officials, and other decision makers who immediately wanted to raise the recommended 20 miles per hour suggestion. We heard a lot of 20 miles per hour, that's too slow. Can we do 25 instead? Which in practice often translates to a much higher operating speeds, as I'm sure you're well aware. And I won't go through all of these reasons that you see on the slide here because of time. But we really had to get across the point that 20 miles per hour is a very intentional recommendation. It's not just because it rhymes with 20 is plenty, and not 25 or 30 miles per hour. So essentially, I've had to discuss with a lot of these decision makers and people who are drafting ordinances to support this. Basic stuff. Kinetic energy increases with the square of speed. 25 miles per hour impact produces approximately 56% more energy than a 20 mile per hour impact. Stopping distance is also affected. It increases significantly when you up those speeds, often making the difference between avoiding a crash entirely and causing a life-threatening injury. So these are just some of the conversations I've had. If you go to the next slide, please. So this is still a question that I need to answer often. These are some of the graphics that we've already seen in this presentation so far. A lot of you are familiar with them. Uh, we found that framing this discussion around survivability at 20 miles per hour has really helped recenter the conversation. And with that said, concerns about driver frustration, going too slow, compliance, and mobility impacts, it didn't disappear. But I feel like acknowledging those in these conversations that we had really helped us move towards more of pragmatic solutions. Next slide, please. So for our recommended action item number two, which is develop a sign implementation strategy for increasing sign density across the city, our consultants, I think very astutely included a maximum sign replacement scenario to illustrate the ideal density if subdivision speeds were reduced citywide. That's the 8,200 signs that you see there. So unfortunately, I think including this level of detail backfired. Some council members that we had that were geared up
Well, it seems that we're having problems with Matt's connection. Um, we're gonna wait for a moment to see if he can regain connection. We're gonna wait just one more minute. Hopefully Matt is able to rejoin. Well, we're gonna see if Matt is able to rejoin and then pick up his last slides of his presentation at the end. In the meantime, we're going to continue with our next speaker. We're going to hear from Dan from Salt Lake City. So Dan, please take it away. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you for having me here today. So my name's Dan Bergenthal. I work for Salt Lake City. I'm a transportation engineer. I do a lot of work in traffic safety, work a lot with the bicycle and pedestrian facilities here, and also with our traffic calming program. So I'm going to talk with you a little bit today about our experience reducing the speed limits on our local roads from 25 to 20 miles an hour. So we started talking about dropping the speed limit on our local neighborhood roadways all the way back in 2018. At that time, we didn't think we had political backing, but we knew it would just take a simple change to a single city ordinance, which establishes the prima facie speed limit in the city. So in my presentation here, I'm going to walk you through the timeline and process that allowed us to change the speed limit on these local roads. And that happened back in 2022. So what is the prima facie speed limit? That is the default speed limit on all streets unless otherwise posted. That speed limit was 25 miles an hour for about the last 30 years in Salt Lake City. I believe before that it was 30 and it was reduced. I don't know when that happened, but it was way before my time. So it was 25 miles an hour, and that comprises about 420 miles or 70% of the city-owned public roadways in Salt Lake City. Oh, by the way, I just wanted to say our city is quite a bit smaller than Jacksonville. We are only about 200,000 people here right in Salt Lake City. Our metro area is a couple million, but we are just a small part of that. So back in 2020 and 21, we noticed that there was a overall spike in roadway fatalities. And as you can see, they doubled there in 2020 and held steady in 21 as well. So we were getting pretty alarmed with that. Also, a local advocacy group called Sweet Streets, they also noticed that. And so in 2021, Sweet Streets began distributing 20 is plenty lawn signs around the city, and they began lobbying the city council members about speeding issues. So in March of 22, Sweet Streets made a presentation to our city council stressing the importance of reducing speeds to help prevent fatalities and serious injuries. And as a result, the council directed the city's transportation division to look into the feasibility of reducing the prima facie speed limit from 25 to 20. So this was beginning to look like that political support that we were looking for back in 2018. So in April of that same year, we're talking 2020, the Transportation Division, sent a report to our city council, which provided details concerning how speed impacts our streets and the costs involved in making a change to that speed limit in that ordinance. So in May of 22, we gave a presentation to the city council highlighting the key points from our report. We stressed the benefits of lower speed limits when it comes to reducing injuries sustained in collisions involving vulnerable road users, such as bicyclists and pedestrians. We also stressed that only about 4% of crashes in our city involve bicyclists and pedestrians, but they make up more than 46% of all fatalities. So our presentation also included information from a 2011 study conducted by the AAA that determined the risk of death to pedestrians in the U.S. who were involved in vehicle crashes at different speeds. These images provide a sampling of the speed versus risk of death data. For example, in this study, they found that pedestrians involved in a crash with a vehicle traveling at 32 miles an hour had a risk of death of 25%, and at 58 miles per hour, the risk increased to 90%. And then looking deeper into the study, at 20 miles an hour, the risk of death of a pedestrian is 7%, which rises to 12% at 25 miles an hour. That's an increase of 71%. Likewise, the risk of severe injury increases by 76% when comparing 20 to 25 miles an hour. Essentially, small reductions in speed result in exponential safety gains. That has to do with the kinetic energy that Matt spoke about earlier. So we also spoke about how the city of Portland, Oregon reduced their speed limit on local streets from 25 to 20 back in 2018. And in 2020, they completed a study that concluded that the change resulted in lower observed vehicle speeds and fewer vehicles traveling at higher speeds, over 30 miles an hour. It's most noteworthy that the reduction in the percentage of vehicles traveling faster than 30 miles an hour and 35 miles an hour are larger in magnitude than the other changes. So essentially, their study demonstrated that the number of higher end speeders was reduced. And this point was very well received by our city council. So we told the city council that to implement the change, we would need to update the city's prima facie speed limit ordinance and replace all existing 25-mile-an-hour signs on our local roads. We estimated the cost to be about $100,000. We also recommended not increasing speed enforcement on neighborhood streets. Rather, we told them a focus should be made to educate and enforce blatant speed violations. Education should focus on benefits of slower speeds in our neighborhoods. Targeted outreach to minority communities should also be included to emphasize that the change in speed limit is intended to improve safety in their communities, not to provide an excuse for targeted police enforcement. So we worked closely with our police department on all of this to make sure that this was done properly. Because that was one of the things that continually came up in our city council meetings was, that people were afraid that we were just doing this to make more money. And so we had to say that is not the purpose of this. And so we had to tell them that, look, we're not going to be doing increased speed enforcement. Things are going to remain the same. And also we're going to be combining this with some livable streets type work, the addition of traffic calming as well. So in May of 22, the city council approved the ordinance change and also provided us funding. And in July, we had a contractor on board and we began making the changes. This photo is of our mayor who helped install the first 20-mile-an-hour signs. She's the one holding that speed limit sign right there. The project was completed by the end of August of 2022. So over the past 3 years, to follow up on the prima facie speed limit change, we also reduced the speed limit by 5 miles an hour on city-owned collector and arterial streets. We began a new traffic calming program, and our police stepped up enforcement on collector and arterial streets. Our fatalities have now begun to drop, as you can see there in those numbers. This trend is encouraging, but only time will tell if this will continue. So the takeaway from all this is that, at least in our city, public and political support was key. Couldn't do anything without that. And also working closely with our police to increase enforcement on local streets was essential. And following up with traffic calming also was very important. We have a very big program right now that's moving forward because we knew that changing out the signs would have some effect, but really to get the speeds down where we were wanting them, we were going to have to do something physical to the roadways. And so that's moving ahead. And we are very happy with what we're seeing so far with the drop in overall fatalities, also in serious injuries. We've seen that dropping. But like I said, only time will tell if that will continue. So thank you very much. And that's all I have.
Okay, thank you, Dan. Very interesting presentation. Matt, well, we will go back to your slides.
Yeah, I apologize for that, everyone. I had a little power outage, but I can just quickly go through if you wouldn't mind
Yes.
jumping maybe to slide 15 on mine.
Sure.
I can just do a quick wrap up. And yeah, again, I apologize for that. I think my cat may have unplugged everything. So and no power.
So, okay.
Yeah, I
You
think
were
right about
here?
here. Yeah,
Yes.
I'll just go
Okay.
through real quickly on some lessons learned. So our consultant gave what's the best option? That would be replacing over 8,000 signs, and that would cost $1.6 million. We determined. So we had a lot of council members that just saw this $1.6 million price tag and immediately were just like, okay, well, we can't implement this. It'll never work. So they just kind of threw it in the trash. And I think the lesson learned behind that is that you really need to emphasize to them that we can scale it back. We can pick a handful of routes that we begin with. We can do it through iterative steps. We don't have to go out and do maximum signage density in every single residential area. And like I said, I think some of these decision makers would just flip right to that price tag and then just write it off completely. If you wouldn't mind going to the next slide, and I'll just skip ahead. To this slide, I think is great. Back or sorry, forward one more slide. One slide advance, please. Actually, just back one. There you go. Perfect. With the red text. So just quickly, some of the lessons that we learned when we're trying to implement this. When people come and they say 20 seems pretty low, it feels like we're crawling. Can we do something better? Maybe you do in some ordinances that support this. Maybe you allow for a 20 to 25 mile per hour window. So some of those or local collectors can be 25, but then 20 miles per hour in all residential areas. You can base it on context. So allow a little bit of flexibility there. I know NACTO gets into this in some of their guidance documents that I think is pretty good. So many signs, like I said, a lot of our elected officials saw that price tag of 1.6 million. We have a tight budget this year, and they're like, this isn't going to happen. So can you scale it back? Can you look at just routes on the high injury network or just, targeted areas where you can do some of that signage? Maybe start with the 100 grand and do some signs and see how it works with some of those speed reduction countermeasures mixed into it. Another thing that came up with is we had residents that are like, so what are these countermeasures? What do you want? They just wanted speed humps. That was always the go-to. You get people speeding through their neighborhood, they call up and can you put speed humps in my neighborhood? You want to be able to explain to them what is a chicane, what is a curb extension, like what how can narrowing with the edge line create an impacted sort of roadway that vehicles go slower on, things like that. So one solution to that was we're going to do some quick builds. So we got another Safe Streets and Road for All grant, and we're going to do 10 quick builds in 2026. And this will really help them experience what some of those countermeasures feel like, not just them reading it on a paper or us, sending a couple photos of it to them. They can really get out there and walk through some of these intersections and feel the reduced vehicle speeds. So I think that's it for me. And again, I apologize for cutting off like I did, and happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Matt. Now we're going to move to our last speaker of the day. Jeremy will present on the Madison 20 is Plenty program. Thank you.
Wonderful, and thank you for having me here. Once again, my name is Jeremy Nash. I'm an engineer here with the City of Madison, here in southern Wisconsin. I'm here to talk about our 20 is Plenty program. So a quick overview of my presentation. I'm going to talk about why 20 is Plenty here in Madison, what kind of made us choose that, move ahead with that, what our timeline has looked like. I want to touch on community engagement because I think that's a pretty big component of it, and also some feedback that we received. So starting off, why 20 is Plenty here in Madison. Just some quick Madison facts. We have a population about 280,000. Some of the travel trends is, so if you see the word Madison on the map to the right, that's kind of right where our downtown is, the N in Madison. So the interesting geography, whoever decided to put a capital city and major university in a thin little strip of land between two lakes, it was, I'd love to have a conversation with them, but this has created some interesting kind of transportation issues, and a lot of folks work downtown on the Isthmus, but not a lot of folks live downtown. So in the morning, we see a lot of folks commuting, right into downtown. In the afternoon, kind of the opposite of that. We were awarded the status of Platinum Bicycle Friendly Community by the League of American Bicyclists, and we became a Vision Zero city back in 2020. So now talking about our speed management. Speed management is kind of the what we use to refer to all of our speed reductions, whether that's 20 is Plenty or some of the speed reductions on collectors or arterials. So the ones handled on collectors and arterials are through our Vision Zero program and not specifically through our 20 is Plenty. And 20 is Plenty is focused on our local residential streets. So that helps us kind of with some of our messaging and looking at how we present 20 is Plenty and talk about other speed management projects. To give you a feel for that. I also want to mention national trends. That's something I try to mention to folks when I'm talking to them about 20 is Plenty is according to the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration, pedestrian versus vehicle crashes are up by 57% from 2013 to 2022. We could share the whole presentation. We can focus on why that is. Personally, I think it might be some of, distracted driving, cell phones, everything. But regardless, we're seeing that trend, and that's something we do not want to see continue here in Madison. Here's a kind of a quick map from, I believe this is 2023, just some Vision Zero improvements we've made around the city. I believe the orange ones are some of our speed reductions, but we've been trying to, do some infrastructure changes as well. But more broadly, we have our Vision Zero program as a whole, where we do kind of a lot of different things. A lot of things exist and live in there. And 20 is Plenty is one kind of branch of that. I just wanted to mention that. So 20 is Plenty, specifically looking at speed limits on our local residential streets. I also want to mention our Complete Green Streets Guide. Both our Complete Green Streets Guide and our Vision Zero Madison Action Plan are both on the city website. If anyone's curious to take a look, it really helped us to kind of have some policy backing to kind of what we're doing. And whenever we rebuild a street, we look at the width, what type of street, what it's the suggested speed limit, parking, that kind of thing. And bottom left, we have our modal hierarchy. So we have pedestrians at the very top, transit below that, then bicyclists, and then vehicles, and then parking. So sometimes reconstructing a road downtown, we don't have a lot of space. And what do we prioritize? It's very helpful for us to have that city policy kind of backing up all their decisions when we're doing this. So now looking at a timeline for 20 is Plenty here in Madison. So we did phase one and phase two. And phase one of 20 is Plenty began in 2021. And talking to our mayor, she was very insistent that we call it phase one and not pilot. Like initially I was kind of calling our pilot, 20 is Plenty pilot. But she was pretty insistent. No, it's going to be, it's a permanent change that we are making. It's not something that we're going to pull back, we, go back on kind of thing. So I think that messaging from the very beginning was very helpful. And phase one consisted of 2 areas across the city. On the map on the right, I have kind of a handful of different locations. It's kind of from the drawing board, where do we choose 2 locations to have, implement phase one? And here's some just initial characteristics I was thinking of. My initial considerations: logical geographic area, that being, there's like a river on one side and a highway on another, like you turn into this neighborhood and you're within a phase one, 20 is Plenty area. Existing speeding locations, equity, a variety of street characteristics, street width, on-street parking, existing traffic calming, intersection control, but it's kind of just getting as much different experience as we can with phase one. And then we had Transportation Commission. They were interested in total crashes, injury crashes, fatality crashes, and crashes per square mile. So really looking at those, the crash numbers, and that just kind of helped guide our decision making. And our mindset was always we're going to do phase one, and then phase two will be citywide implementation. So phase one was just kind of a couple areas to learn a little bit more, but we always had the intention of moving forward to citywide implementation. I mentioned equity. I did want to mention real quick, definitely a component of our Vision Zero program is taking a look at equity for all citizens of Madison as a whole. And we want to get down to 0 traffic fatalities, and that takes everyone kind of working together. And we want to be hearing from everyone. We want to be working with everyone across the city. And if you were to take a map of kind of the requests that we get or the complaints that come in, you were to map those, it's a lot of folks that, who live in more well-off areas have time to reach out. They know how the system works. But there's a lot of areas we just don't hear anything from, and folks are maybe not sure how to engage with the system, or how they just have other things in their life that they're worried about, and not worried about reporting speeding, excuse me, that kind of thing. So we have neighborhood resource teams where we have teams of staff, city employees that go to these neighborhoods, and we have meetings there. Sometimes things come up related to traffic, sometimes related to housing, kind of everything. But we really want to incorporate some of these areas within our phase one of 20 is Plenty as well. So you can see here's a map of the two locations we ended up choosing. On the top right is our Teresa Hamilton neighborhood on the southwest side. And those purple outlines are some of our neighborhood resource team areas. And the one in the middle is Tenny Lapin neighborhood, a little bit more downtown on the isthmus between the two lakes. And the left side was just some of the statistics that I presented to the Transportation Commission. Kind of pulled up a bunch of different areas across the city, taking a look at all those, and that's what that looked like. Phase two, as I mentioned, was citywide implementation. So we began that last winter and completed that this last summer. So phase two has now been completed. And our approach was not to install signs on every city block, but more as you turn off of a higher speed road on into a neighborhood, into a 20s plenty area, you would not be able to get into the neighborhood without passing one of those 20-mile-an-hour speed limit signs. So this kind of helps reduce sign clutter, and we could always go back and install more if needed. But that was kind of our initial approach. Lots and lots of community engagement. I'll get into that a little bit further. And also, phase two encapsulated all functional class 5 roads in Madison. So here we break all our roads into 5 functional classes, and 1 being kind of our really busy high volume arterials, and 5 being our residential streets. And so just kind of from the get-go, again, looking at phase 2, how do we want to go about implementing this across the city? We started with our functional class 5s and kind of worked outward from there. Installation. We had a contractor install the signs. Typically, we do all of our signing in-house by city staff, but this is just a few too many signs for them. So we had a contractor do that. I mentioned we installed those in the neighborhoods. We had kind of 3 install situations. Either there's no sign there currently, so we need to put a new base, new pole, and new sign, or there's installing existing infrastructure, that being streetlight poles or sign poles. So if we had a sign pole that's just 1 parking sign, we can add a speed limit sign to that as well. Or swapping existing 25-mile-an-hour speed limit signs for 20-mile-an-hour speed limit signs. So some of the numbers, we installed almost 2,500 new signs. So it's quite a good number of new signs. That kind of encapsulated 580 miles of roads here in Madison. So about 65% of our road network. And it was 160 pages of plans. And I like this picture because a lot of Madison kind of emphasizes the downtown isthmus, but a lot of the city is kind of, more, a lot more trees, a lot more residential. I realized I didn't include prices anywhere, so I wanted to mention that here as well. Total, it cost us $474,495. And that included 1,267 signs on new poles and bases, 725 installs on existing infrastructure, and 504 instances of swapping out an existing 25-mile-an-hour speed limit sign for 20. And this came from our capital budget, so our city's kind of yearly budget. So I want to touch on community engagement because I think that was an important component of this. So a lot of times we're meeting residents where they're at, not expecting people to come to us, to reach out to us with questions, but going to them and setting up tables, attending neighborhood events, really making sure that folks understand why we're doing this. I'll get on some of the feedback later and some of the talking points, but just trying to be as transparent as we could. So we had resources in multiple languages, that being English, Spanish, Mandarin, Chinese, and Hmong, which is some of the more prominent languages here in Madison. I mentioned going to neighborhood events. Police stations and libraries are helping distribute 20-mile-an-hour speed limit sign or yard signs. So that was helpful, appreciated. Here's some of our yard signs. Once again, multiple languages. People love the turtle. I will say people are a big fan of the turtle. So it's just kind of a last minute addition, but people are a big fan of that. I did want to mention our QR codes as well. That was a helpful tool. You're driving down the street, you're taking your dog for a walk. But you see that, when you have more time, you might stop and take a closer look. And it was helpful to direct folks to our website. We also had a one sheet, which I am now understanding kind of the importance of this. And in my mind, okay, we want to get someone a piece of information, a piece of paper with some information about 20 is plenty. I was, my first instinct was to put as many facts and data and, really fill it full of detailed small language. And thankfully a public information officer was kind of guided me in this direction, and just kind of a quick, you can grab it within 30 seconds to a minute. You can get a feel for what we're talking about. There's the QR code for more information. My contact information is also on the city website. Yeah, just kind of something quick that people digest it pretty quickly. This is one side. The next page is the second side. So just you can skim through it in 30 to 60 seconds, an event with your child or something. It kind of gives a very brief overview and then provides more information if folks are curious. I mentioned our website. We're in the process of revamping that a little bit, but it was very helpful just to be able to point folks back to one direction. Here's a lot of information. Here's why we're doing it. Here's my contact information. So as much as we could, direct folks back to our website, and I think that really helped a lot. But I wanted to mention our report a problem or report a safety improvement. That's just separately through our city website, especially going to a lot of neighborhood events. Hey, want to make sure you're aware that the 20 is Plenty program is, coming soon. It's going to be implemented citywide. And a lot of times folks would also, have a, well, also over here, this intersection, I feel unsafe, or this intersection would benefit from an island or that kind of thing. So we kind of had little business cards that just had contact information for the report a problem on our city website. And that's very good at getting those requests to where they need to go. So it's helpful to just have some of those cards with me and when I'm at community events. And we've all seen something like this before multiple times in this presentation as well. But it does carry a lot of information. I do think this is a very useful graphic to kind of communicate why we're moving down to 20 miles per hour. And I think it carries a lot of information. We had that on the one sheet. We had it on yard signs at community events. But it's very useful to kind of graphically communicate that information. So this last summer, we had a press conference with the mayor when phase 2 was completed. So citywide implementation was completed here in Madison. So we have a press conference kind of announce that. And I want to mention that our leadership has been a huge ally for Vision Zero and 20 is Plenty. And that's really helped us kind of have that strong leadership from the top also kind of helping guide things. There's a lot of ongoing events. So public outreach, getting out in the community, going, meeting folks where they're at. There's already a lot of events happening that it was easy to just email someone and say, hey, do you mind if I set up a table, talk about, road safety? And like, oh yeah, absolutely. More the merrier. Didn't have anyone ever say no, but there's a lot of ongoing events that were just easy to kind of take advantage of. And I don't need to set up a whole neighborhood meeting or anything like that. It's just, I'm going to go just be there in the neighborhood. So we had Parks Alive events across the city. Safety Saturday was with Madison Fire Department. I did want to mention we added a spinning wheel with prizes the last couple of years. That was very popular, very, very popular. Did not expect that. But just having a spinning wheel, having kind of relatively easy safety questions, kind of targeted towards children, but they can win a prize like a pen or a water bottle, that kind of thing. People were very interested in that. Got a lot more people coming up to our tables and having a line at our table, and I don't know, people just really enjoyed that in a way I didn't fully expect, but that was awesome. And then also taking a map of the neighborhood to each of the community events, and you can see it kind of propped up against the table in both these pictures. But people like being able to kind of point to something on a map at this intersection or this direction over here. That was helpful for us as well. Other events, there was sometimes more of kind of like a one-off event. Did a lot of tabling at libraries, just kind of throughout the day, throughout the city. When having neighborhood meetings, you get a lot of feedback from folks who maybe slightly older in age or you're retired, have the time to come to community meetings. So we kind of tried to talk to story time, draws a lot of kind of infants and young children. And so it's a way to engage with younger parents or the knitting circles or yoga circles did attract some of the older crowd as well. So it's important to engage with them as well. Went on a La Movida radio show, which is entirely Spanish speaking, so everything had to be translated. Our Everyday Engineering podcast, which is done by the City of Madison Engineering Department. Probably not the world's most popular podcast, but again, trying to reach as many folks as many folks as we can. Also neighborhood association meetings. Folks would always love when I'd reach out and offer to attend a meeting, talk about 20 is Plenty and other road things. So some specific talking points I wanted to mention that kind of did help when I'm at those tabling events is no one ever plans on being in a crash, but they happen. And when they do, it's better for everyone if speeding wasn't involved. From the driver, from the pedestrian, better for everyone if speeding isn't involved. Also, if you leave a few minutes late, we all run late, can't find your wallet, can't find your keys. But you're tempted to go, go a little close to 30, 35 in your neighborhood maybe, but that only adds, maybe 30 seconds to your commute in the morning, leaving your neighborhood if you're going 20 miles an hour over 25. A couple more talking points. Again, we kind of had speed management was more largely through our Vision Zero program, but 20 is Plenty was specifically focused on our local residential streets. So kind of separating those two things, and people might push back against our larger speed reductions on collectors or arterials, but really we're talking 20 is Plenty specifically focused on our local residential streets. And also mentioning the statistic that pet versus vehicle crashes are by 57%. That's a trend we don't want to see here in Madison. So mentioning this is a growing issue nationwide. We're trying to do what we can to prevent that here in Madison. And ultimately, everyone deserves to get across our city safely, no matter their mode of travel, whether folks are walking or biking or taking the bus or driving, doesn't matter. Everyone should be able to get across our city safely. So when I tried to bring everything back to that idea, as folks kind of saw where we were coming from. So I'm running short on time, but I want to touch on a couple points of feedback we'd gotten. So some common comments we received for this is a money grab by the city. You're going to have a police officer in every city corner giving out tickets. And I had to reassure folks like, no, absolutely. That's not our intention. This is a safety focused project. And I would be thrilled if not a single person was given a speeding ticket for going, within a $20 speed limit zone. Other folks thought it wouldn't be effective or adjusting the new sign locations. We had a lot of folks reach out saying, hey, I love this program, but I just don't want the sign directly out front of my, front window. So just kind of shifting some of those. There's a lot more of those than I anticipated. But then folks, we're ultimately very happy with that. So that was a good thing. And also people will say Madison hates cars. Madison just hates cars. But that's not true. Again, kind of bringing it back to everyone deserves to get across our city safely. So and cars are definitely a component of that. Taking a look at some crashes, phase one, we began in 2021 and crashes obviously can vary a lot year to year. So I was trying to look at as wide of a time period as I could. So I looked at crashes from 2017 to 2020 and then 2021 to 2024. And so when comparing crashes from those two chunks of time, citywide crashes decreased by 29%. So I think that's an important thing to start with. And there's a lot of other efforts happening within our Vision Zero program, a lot of different kind of burning the candle from a lot of different ends. So that's one component of it. But then within our two phase one areas, we saw a reduction in crashes by 41% and 44%, which is pretty substantial. So again, citywide crashes reduced by 29%, but then we kind of saw an enhanced safety improvement in those phase one areas. And then also was touched on earlier was the reduction in high-end speeders, both within our speed management projects through Vision Zero and our 20 is Plenty program. We have seen the people drop in reduction in the folks going 10 miles or above the speed limit. And if we move the speed limit down, folks are still going to go, some folks are still going to choose to go 10 miles or above, but everything just kind of shifted downward if you kind of look at that whole distribution. All right, last slide. So some feedback we've gotten is we've given almost 450 free yard signs. I think the yard signs are important. The city can come in and put, a 20-mile speed limit signs. But if your next door neighbor puts out a yard sign on their front yard, it kind of adds a slightly different, almost peer pressure effect. But it's not, I don't see a police officer, I'm good. It's, folks are kind of, we're trying to shift driving culture, and the yard signs kind of give folks the ability to show their support for it. And it is nice driving on through neighborhoods and you see those signs everywhere, and it does make you think of that and kind of it's a little more in your face. And also a lot of folks were excited for 20 is Plenty to come to their neighborhood, and typically we receive a lot of pushback for speed management projects, but folks are really excited for 20 is Plenty to come to their neighborhood and kind of be implemented. So on the right, I have some quotes of folks that had chosen wrote in and share their enthusiasm. And with that, I believe that's in my presentation, and I'm open to taking any questions.
Okay, we will be answering questions in a moment, Jeremy. We have a few questions posted from our audience. But before that, I just wanted to mention that the CM credits are pending. And once they are available, we will be sending an email to all attendees to notify that they're available to log. So just keep an eye on an email notifying this. Now we move to the Q&A portion of the webinar. We have a few questions posted. The first one is for Dan. The question is, what proportion of serious injuries and fatalities occur in Salt Lake City on the local streets impacted by the speed limit changes?
I don't have that number with me, but I can just tell you that the majority of the crashes and injuries occur on collectors and arterials. That's typically how it is. But I do not have that number for our local roads.
Okay, thank you. Second question is for Matt. The table presented for Jacksonville that showed a speed reduction results for various traffic calming treatments. Was that based on just city implementation results, or was it pulled from literature and research?
Yeah, we had a really extensive lit review for the study, and so that table is derived from that. But it's not to say that some of those countermeasures have been implemented in Jacksonville. I just don't think we really like did a before and after to determine the crash reduction factor of each. But the table is from the lit review.
Okay, thank you, Matt. We have another question. This time is for Jeremy. Is it possible to just add a modified sign with a 0 sticker to replace the 5 on another sign, the 25 mph sign, to reduce the cost and reduce installation time?
I think that'd be possible. I know in some situations here we have it's a little difficult to do it making it look clean and fresh, but it is definitely possible and definitely a good way to keep costs down. And we have in some instances, not with our speed limit signs, but we have been able to modify signs after the fact or kind of change a parking zone by using a sticker. So definitely is possible.
Okay.
I have a quick, I've never found it in practice, but I was at a conference once and someone was saying they were swearing that they had these like rectangular magnets with the new speed on it and they could just kind of plop them on the sign. And I was obsessed with like, oh wow, that'll save us $1 million, if we can just buy a bunch of magnets and do this. But I never saw it in practice. I did some research and did some digging, but I just never saw it. Maybe it was like a smaller rural community or something that tried that, but I haven't seen it on a large scale.
Okay. Matt, we have a follow-up question for you. Someone in the audience is interested in getting the literature review backup and presentation. We can make the presentations from today available, but what about the literature review that you conducted?
Yeah, absolutely. I can send it to you all and or just email me directly. My email's on my slides and I'll make sure you get, any back information that we have on the study. I can give it to you, no problem.
Great, thank you. Now, there is a question for all panelists. The question is, did you have to address e-bike or e-scooter operations and speeds as you were developing and implementing the 20s Plenty program?
I can jump in on that. We did not specifically within our 20s Plenty program. I know through our broader Vision Zero program, there has been some medicine ordinances kind of created to address some of that, but not specifically within our 20s Plenty program.
Salt Lake City, we haven't addressed that either. I know that the state's been looking at passing some ordinances that or laws that deal with the e-bikes, but we haven't addressed that on a local level.
I'd have to say the same. It almost feels like sort of a current issue, like it kind of came out of nowhere because a lot of these bikes are getting cheaper, they're getting faster. And the thing that makes me fearful is that, if you have a micromobility program that allows for e-bike sharing, and then you have some of these accidents that happen on e-bikes, and then, you get a really reactive council member or elected official that says, all right, no e-bikes in the entire city. So we're trying to find a way to sort of, find a decent balance where people can enjoy them, but just safely and make sure that they're not these class 3 e-bikes that are essentially like a moped or a motorcycle.
Okay. Great, thank you. Um, there is another question for all panelists. What advice do you have for an agency planning to embark on their own 20s planning plan? What did you wish you knew at the outset?
Well, for us in Salt Lake City, having a local advocacy group really helped. So if you can work with the public and get some kind of group like that set up, it's really helpful. And then, you know, working with your mayor, your city council, however your government is set up, to get their support before you embark on it. That's key.
I touched on some of mine in my presentation, but really, use those infographics, front load all of that information for those that aren't going to read the full report and are just going to look at the first few pages. I found that to be really helpful. Also, like make sure that implementation itself can be scalable. You don't want to scare people by saying, all right, now the whole city is going to be driving, 20 miles per hour because people really freak out about that. Like I said, we had a lot of pushback of people, wanting 25, why not 30? And it's like it just keeps going up and up. So make it a scalable project where you can begin with a couple of routes and go in there and show how effective it is, and then you can bring it citywide.
I'd say here in Madison, it really helped us to just be very transparent about everything. And just here's why we're doing it. Here's, what we're doing, why we're doing it. It seems like in recent years, there's been a lot more distrust in government, kind of in all levels of government. And just, folks here have, this is a money grab by the city, or no, just being very transparent. This is a safety initiative. Here's why we're doing it. And the more folks understood the why behind it, the more kind of agreed with it. And we're ultimately kind of in support of the program.
Great. Thank you. There is another question. How are you addressing enforcement challenges given that police capacity and speed enforcement tools may be limited?
That's a good question. I mean, we're still wrangling with that. Like I said, we're the largest city in the contiguous United States by land area, so we have a lot of ground to cover. And, our Jacksonville Sheriff's Office is just, they have to be in so many places at once that it's a tough one. It really like leads to conversations with Jacksonville Sheriff's Office and the planning department and our public works to see like how can we come up with something that's actually going to work. I wish I had a big solution I could just give you right now, but it's always in discussion.
And our police department, they have been going to the mayor, asking for additional officers every year. And so they've been able to get some more officers over the past 5 years. So that's really helped. Another thing that we do, we realize we can't have enforcement everywhere. So we have some speed trailers that we put out there, speed feedback signs. And we've noticed that helps with speeding, and also really helps with the residents to feel like we're helping them out and doing something, even though we can't always get the enforcement that we want.
And here in Madison, our MPD Madison Police Department is part of our Vision Zero team. So we meet every week with our Vision Zero team meets every week, and MPD has always been there. So from the beginning, kind of discussing 20s Plenty, how to best implement it, what their role will be. And they don't want to be on city corner giving out tickets for folks going 25 and 20 mile an hour zone. But one thing that has helped was the yard signs, and it was less kind of the city coming in and enforcing this, and more kind of the public peer pressure and kind of slowly shifting that driving culture rather than carrying a stick kind of thing.
Great, thank you. Another question for all panelists. Did you coordinate with emergency services to identify the speed calming treatments in place?
I can say here in Madison, more broadly, anytime we put in sort of like a speed hump or that kind of thing, we run that past emergency services, and there are certain routes we will avoid due to that. Yeah.
At Salt Lake City, we do the same. Whenever we have any type of traffic calming project, we work really closely with our emergency service people to make sure that they're on board and that we design it properly for them. Regarding the 20 is plenty speed limit, they can go however fast they want when they've put on their sirens and their lights. So that really hasn't affected them much.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just just echoing Jeremy and Dan on this. We try to discuss those with them as much as possible. I think we have ongoing discussions from a lot of our bike facilities. If we want to put in a protected two-way cycle track or something like that, we need to ensure that emergency services are still able to get through. It's the part of the safe systems approach is the responsiveness after a crash. And so that's something it has to be part of the conversation. So it's a difficult thing to have to slow down these cars while allowing these cars to go as fast as possible, so it's a balance that you got to find with, maybe designs using selective routes, things like that.
Right. So we have time for one more question. How does reducing speeds to 20 miles per hour affect or impact traffic flow and commute times?
I can say congestion hasn't been too big of an issue here in Madison. We are running out of space on the isthmus. We can't build more lanes kind of thing. But specifically kind of, separating our speed management projects from 20 is plenty and speed management being more in our arterials and collectors, that kind of being its own category of things. And then 20 is plenty being its own separate category of things. And 20 is plenty if we're implementing that citywide. It'll really only take you an extra 30 seconds, maybe 60 seconds to leave your neighborhood in the morning. That's a pretty minimal impact to your commute. So it really hasn't been too big of an issue there.
I think it's also helpful if you have a council person or even the mayor in some situations that says, hey, we want it to be safer. We don't mind if there's a 30-second delay or something. It's always such a relief because then the engineers know that they can be a little bit less risk averse in the designs that they're going to select if they know, okay, there's some anticipated delay, but things are going to be a lot safer. It's a good trade-off, I think.
Yeah, exactly. Same here. Dropping from 25 to 20 on our local streets doesn't really impact the commute much. We have very little traffic congestion on those small local roads, so we haven't seen any impacts that we're concerned with.
Okay. Well, with that, we conclude our Q&A portion of the webinar today. Dan, Matt, and Jeremy, thank you so much for joining us today to share these great insights and the discussion of this important topic for the safe systems approach. With that, I also want to thank our attendees for your participation today. A recording of this speaker series webinar will be available on the Metroplan Orlando YouTube channel. We look forward to seeing you at our next speaker series. Thank you.